Addiction is not just a weakness or a moral failure. It's a call, a whisper from the soul that something inside is starving for meaning. Carl Jung once said, "Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. But the reason behind it is a spiritual thirst, a thirst for wholeness." When a person turns to alcohol, drugs, or even unhealthy love, they are often chasing the divine, trying for a hole in their heart that the world cannot fill. Addiction is the symptom. The cause is a separation from one's true self and from God. Many people fall into addiction not because they seek pleasure, but because they seek relief. Relief from emptiness, from pain, from spiritual disconnection. Jung believed that the core of every addiction lies a misunderstood search for God, a deep, unconscious longing for the divine experience that society has forgotten. He famously said to one of his patients, "You are thirsting for the Spirit, but you're mistaking alcohol for the Spirit." The bottle becomes a substitute for the sacred. The high becomes a counterfeit of transcendence. Those who are called to deep spiritual purpose often face the darkest battles. Addiction is one of those battles, because the stronger your light, the stronger your shadow. Jung taught that the soul of a chosen one cannot awaken through comfort. It must go through the fire of its own destruction. Addiction is that fire. It strips away illusions, pride, and false identities, until only truth remains. The chosen ones fall the hardest because they are meant to rise the highest. Jung's concept of the shadow is crucial here. The shadow is everything we reject, repress, or deny within ourselves. Addiction is often the way the shadow tries to speak, saying, "See me, heal me, don't run anymore." When you drink, use, or escape, it's not the substance calling you. It's your shadow cry out to be integrated. True healing begins not by fighting the addiction, but by listening to what it's trying to reveal. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your unhealed self asking for love. Addiction destroys the ego, the false sense of control. When life becomes unmanageable, the addict reaches a point of surrender. This collapse is painful, but it's sacred, because in that breaking, the divine finally has space to enter. Jung saw this in many of his patients. The moment they surrendered, grace entered their lives. God speaks most clearly when the ego has been silenced by suffering. Addiction isn't always just a psychological issue. It's a spiritual emergency. The person isn't sick in the body alone. They're sick in the soul. Carl Jung told an alcoholic once, "Your craving for alcohol is the equivalent, on a low level, of the spiritual thirst for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, the union with God." So what looks like destruction is often a sacred initiation, a descent before the rebirth. Every chosen soul must go through what mystics call the dark night of soul. Addiction is one form of that night, a period where God feels absent and you feel lost. But it's not punishment, it's purification. Through this darkness, the soul sheds what no longer serves it. The light isn't gone, it's simply hidden, waiting for you to rediscover from within. Jung understood something most therapists missed. Suffering has meaning. Addiction is not meaningless pain. It's a sacred teacher. Through suffering, we are humbled. Through humility, we awaken. It is only when the ego breaks apart that we become open to God. The addict's suffering is not a curse. It's the pathway home. Humans have always sought transcendence. Some find it in prayer, others in music, meditation, love, and some, tragically, in substances. But Jung said that the root of the craving is the same, the longing for connection to something greater. The tragedy of addiction is not the desire itself. It's that the soul has chosen a false doorway. The spirit the addict seeks is real, but it's not found in the bottle. It's found within. Every addict has a moment, the moment when they realize that what they've been chasing has never been enough. That moment is divine. It's the voice of God saying, "You are not meant to live like this." Jung called this the turning point of the soul. It's where pain transforms into purpose. And that's when healing begins, when the soul remembers who it truly is. You cannot heal addiction through willpower alone. You must surrender, not to the substance, but to something greater than yourself. This is why Jung inspired the 12-step programs. He believed only a spiritual awakening could truly free an addict. To surrender is not to give up. It's to let go of illusion and return to truth. In Jungian psychology, alchemy is the process of turning lead into gold, darkness into light. Addiction recovery is a modern form of alchemy. Each relapse, each struggle, each tear is part of that transformation. The addict becomes a healer. The wounded becomes a wise. The broken becomes a blessed. That is the alchemy of God. Addiction often begins with childhood pain, a wound never seen or soothed. The substance becomes a mother, the father, the comforter. But recovery means reparenting that inner child, finally giving them the love they never received. As Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And yet, that is exactly how healing begins. When you can no longer enjoy the escape, when the high feels empty, when the same thing that once saved you now destroys you, that's God speaking. He's saying, the lesson is complete. It's time to rise. The addiction served its purpose. It woke you up. Now, you must walk away and remember who you are. Addiction is a battleground where light and shadow collide. And that war exists in all of us, not just in addicts. The chosen ones fight it more fiercely because their souls are destined for depth. Every craving, every relapse, every moment of despair, it's not failure, it's initiation. The light wins when you stop running from your darkness. When awareness enters addiction, transformation begins. You start to see the pattern, the pain, the triggers, the illusion. That seeing is grace. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Addiction ends the day awareness begins. And through that awareness, the soul is reborn. Recovery isn't just about quitting. It's about discovering meaning. The addict who recovers often becomes a guide for others. Their pain becomes their ministry. Jung believed that once a person connects with their true self, they no longer need the substitute. The connection to God replaces the craving for escape. Purpose replaces pain. God doesn't always use light to reach you. Sometimes he uses darkness. Addiction was never random. It was part of the path designed to bring you closer to your true essence. As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You are not cursed. You are being called. When you rise from addiction, you carry sacred power. You've walked through hell and survived. Now you can guide others. The healed addict becomes a modern mystic, the living proof that God's grace is real. Your story becomes a map for others who are lost in their own darkness. In the end, addiction is not the opposite of spirituality. It's often the beginning of it. Through your brokenness, you met God. Through your surrender, you found strength. And through your healing, you became light. Carl Jung would say, the wound was never your punishment. It was your portal to the divine. Sparkle's God speaks to his chosen ones not through perfection, but through pain. Every relapse feels like failure, but spiritually it's not. It's a reminder that healing is not linear. Jung said, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. Each relapse is another chance to see what still needs love inside you. It's not about punishment. It's about awareness. The divine doesn't condemn your fall. It whispers, try again. I am still here. You fall so that humility can replace pride and presence can replace pain. At the deepest point of despair, something changes. The addict stops reaching outward and begins to look inward. That's where God waits. Not in the sky, not in the temple, but in the silence behind your suffering. Jung called this individuation, the moment the self unites with the soul. In that sacred union, the need for escape disappears. Because you finally become the home you were searching for. Destruction always comes before creation. A seed must break to grow. An addict must shatter to awaken. Jung believed that destruction is the soul's way of clearing space for rebirth. Everything you've lost, people, peace, time, has served a hidden purpose. The old self had to die for the true self to emerge. Addiction wasn't your end. It was your beginning. Once the chaos of addiction settles, something strange happens. Silence. At first, that silence feels empty, but slowly you begin to notice the silence is alive. It's peace. It's God. After years of noise, distraction, and escape, this silence becomes sacred. You start to feel life again, not as intensity, but as presence. And in that presence, you finally find wholeness. Desire never dies. It transforms. The same fire that once burned for destruction now burns for truth. You still crave, but now you crave like creation and love. Jung believed transformation doesn't kill instincts. It sanctifies them. The addict becomes the artist, the seeker, the healer. The energy remains, but now it flows upward, not downward. It becomes divine desire. You cannot heal what you still hate. For years, addicts punish themselves with guilt and shame. But Jung understood, the soul heals only in love. Self-compassion is not weakness, it's divine power. When you look at your past self and say, I forgive you, that's not you speaking. That's God speaking through you. That's the moment you begin to truly recover. The story of addiction mirrors the story of humanity. We all chase illusions. We all seek escape. We all forget who we are. The addict simply lives that search more visibly. Jung said, what you resist persists, and the world resists its own shadow. But when we stop judging and start understanding, we see that the addict is not the outcast. They are the mirror. They show us what we all hide. Pain is the great purifier. It burns away falseness and forces you to see. Carl Jung taught that suffering expands consciousness, that pain and growth are twins. Without pain, the soul would stay asleep. Addiction is a crucible, but recovery is resurrection. And through it, the soul becomes luminous, not despite the pain, but because of it. Once the addiction fades, the real question appears. Now what? This is the moment God begins to reveal your purpose. The same sensitivity that made you vulnerable now becomes your power. The empathy, the depth, the emotional intensity, all of it can be used to heal others. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Your healing isn't complete until you help someone else awaken. That's how pain becomes purpose. At the end of the journey, there's no more running, no more searching. You realize God was never gone. He was in every fall, every relapse, every silent cry in the dark. You were being shaped, not punished, molded, not broken. The addiction was never your enemy. It was your teacher. And when you rise as someone new, someone who has seen both heaven and hell, and found God in both. That's the destiny of the chosen ones. They fall, so they can show others how to rise. Crescent moon, God speaks most clearly. Jung might say, through the broken heart that learns how to love again.